Sam, do you think we're ready to get going?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've hit 12:40 and I want to keep us on track. We've had such amazing discussions over yesterday and this morning with all of our sessions. So I want to make sure that we don't lose time during the live Q&A. So our next session, I'm actually going to pass the torch over to Ron Bartek and Monica Weldon, two members of our executive committee who are co-moderating the topic, which is nonprofit tools and resources of note. So Ron and Monica, I wonder if you wanted to say a couple words before we start the broadcast.
Be glad to do that. So this is Ron Bartek, speaking on behalf of Monica and our presenters. I would like to introduce the presenters we are fortunate enough to have today. First of all, Dr. Jeff Barrett, the Senior Vice President at the Critical Path Institute, who serves as the lead for its Rare Disease Cures Accelerator data and analytics platform, about which he will inform us all in a couple of minutes. And Dr. David Cella of Northwestern University, who is very deep in his experience and qualifications in terms of quality of life questionnaires, development of fatigue scales, and the development of value sets for various of our rare diseases, about which he'll tell us about things like PROMIS and patient-reported outcomes and so forth. And so without further ado, let me turn the panel over to our first speaker, Dr. Jeff Barrett.
Thanks, Ron. Happy to be here and just glad to provide any feedback and guidance I can along the way. What I want to do today is actually share some information about progress that Critical Path has made in collaboration with the National Organization for Rare Diseases on our Rare Disease Cures Accelerator platform, which is an approach to really providing a tool set for the whole rare disease ecosystem. So I think we can play the video now, and then I can answer questions later. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me today to come and give a presentation on updating the community on the progress we've made recently with the Rare Disease Cures Accelerator data and analytics platform. This is an effort that's been ongoing now for several years with the intention of creating a resource for the entire rare disease ecosystem. A little bit of background about the Critical Path Institute. This is a public-private partnership that was spun up by the FDA in 2005. It's meant to form a neutral ground in the pre-competitive space between the pharmaceutical industry, between a regulatory community as well as academia, a place where data sharing can be pursued, and where the collaboration of resources around unmet medical needs can be explored in a pre-competitive space. The Critical Path over the course of the last 20 years has done a remarkable job at creating consortiums around these concepts within certain unmet medical needs tied to therapeutic areas where there's gaps in knowledge, gaps in data resources. So one among these in the middle column is the RDCA DAP effort. So focused on rare disease cures acceleration. Again, even though we tend to focus on the data and analytics platform, that first part of that acronym is very important. The whole point of spinning up this platform and creating a resource for the ecosystem is with the expectation that we accelerate cures in the rare disease space. One of the mechanisms to do this is this continuity of promoting a culture of sharing across the rare disease space. Now, again, in the rare disease community, this is a very complicated environment. There are for-profit entities, there are not-for-profit entities, there are patient groups, there are pharmaceutical companies, biopharmaceutics, there's a lot of patient advocacy groups. So getting everyone to come together with the same level of understanding and also creating a platform that serves the needs of these individual communities is a daunting task. But we pursue this with a lot of rigor. And again, this is not just a suitcase for data. It's a place where there's a lot of data curation, standardization, making the data usable to all of these communities. And of course, the level of curation increases depending on the purpose. So when we're using data for regulatory purposes, obviously this is a more heightened expectation that the data has to be of good quality. Any tool that we build from the data obviously has to be vetted with the expectation of models being completed with great fidelity and usefulness. We adhere to the principles around model-informed drug development. So this is also meant to be a place where collaboratively tools are built and made available to the ecosystem that can be used for regulatory purposes. And also that it serves the community of patients so that they can get access to their data. They are in control of their data, so it's not a place where data sharing happens without any privacy in place. So this makes the environment more complicated to administer, but again, something that with the benefit of 2021 technology, we have really a state-of-the-art platform that really allows confidence in the secure access to the platform and also the usability of the data. And our big partner in this is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. So this is not something that we do in a vacuum. We have great partnerships with NORD as well as the entire rare disease ecosystem. There are collaborators in this. It's not something that is siloed in any way. This gives you a snapshot of just the diversity of the member organizations, the 15,000 plus Rare Action Network members, the 150,000 calls that are answered annually from patients and caregivers. So again, this is a very daunting task and something that really requires the input and investment of this entire community. So this is a place for partnerships, obviously, and something that if you're building a platform that is a face to this, it has to, again, keep this community in mind as we build the platform itself. This schematic kind of highlights the procedure, so I'll walk you through this. On the far left-hand side, this shows the diversity of the data types that are incorporated into the Data Collaboration Center and the RDCA DAP platform. So what you should see from this is that there's not any one single type data from clinical trials, registry data, natural history data, genomic data, imaging data, surveillance data, data from electronic health records, other data types, be it clinical or preclinical, are accumulated in the platform. The data vault piece of this is a place where we can ensure the data privacy piece of this, so none of that data is shared without knowledge of the community. This is also a place where we handle any concerns around anonymization of the data. The curation step is, again, another step where we apply heuristics and make sure that the data is able to be integrated from the various types you see on the left-hand side. We incorporate, again, very state-of-the-art technology on ontology mapping, standardization, any kind of additional reformatting and cleansing of the data so that it can be moved into a data for analysis section of the cloud environment. Really usable data so that researchers and other investigators can maximize the value of the information that's stored in the platform. We work with the entire ecosystem on building tools that are really interfaced to the data. This is also not a place where we have to build all the tools ourselves. We are working with a lot of technology partners, experts in the field, experts in artificial intelligence, machine learning, other modeling types, so that things like disease progression models, clinical trial simulation tools are also available in the platform. We're just getting ready to launch this in September 14th, so you will see these tools evolve, as well as the relationships that we're building with the entire rare disease ecosystem. So the intention is to first launch this in the fall, but also this has to be curated and grown with an evolving landscape of partners and hopefully evolving data types that are contributed to the platform. Just a quick snapshot just to give you a look behind the curtain here. These are some screenshots of the platform. So what you see here is that there's a lot of metadata collected so that anybody coming into the system can quickly assess what's in there. So you might find that you're interested in some data types and not others, or just concerned about the availability of the data. One of our key stakeholders, obviously, is the clinical reviewer from the FDA, recognizing that they're hoping this becomes a resource for the clinical reviewers to ensure a dialogue with pharmaceutical drug developers so that they can basically advise them that there is some available data that they might consider as a starting point for the clinical development plans for their target agents, as an example. So this kind of information is easy to access. There's lots of tags put up there, so it's searchable. You can find the data easily and quickly. There's a lot of customization that can occur. And again, even after the launch, there's an expectation that this platform will evolve. We will customize the interface to each of the different stakeholders community. How patients come into the system eventually will probably be different from investigators and academic researchers, for example. So there will be a customized feel to this over time. But again, a lot of flexibility, places where data can be visualized. There will be some common tools that will be part of the system, as well as more sophisticated tools and models that will be built on this from external partners, as well as our technology platform partner, Iridium. A lot of detailed data on the origins of the data will be accumulated, so you'll know if it comes from a registry, from a clinical trial. You'll understand the diversity of the data types that are part of this. What are the contributing demographics that really represent any particular data type? And then if you're going to integrate it to understand the details of a clinical trial, the design of that trial, any inclusion exclusion criteria, a lot of the metadata around each data source will be also captured and searchable in the system. The additional drill downs to really understand the detailed data will be possible. So there's a full suite of very sophisticated tools that are available in the platform really right at the get-go, but these will improve over time and only get better, so that this will be a service for the entire community to visualize data, to exploit data, and to use it to, again, accelerate cures for the rare disease community. Our expectation that this will grow organically. We're already making efforts to accumulate data in a diverse group of rare diseases. Obviously, with 8,000 rare diseases in place, it's a daunting task to collect this information, but we've made a good start so far. And part of the reason for the launch is to really encourage others to come to the RDC DAP platform, contribute data, help us build tools, help us make this as good as it can be, and really accelerate rare disease cures. So again, our expectation is that we'll really set the bar high in terms of data management and standards. We will accumulate the state-of-the-art on biomarkers in all rare diseases over time. We will build sophisticated tools using modeling and simulation approaches, as well as data visualization and analytics. This will be a place where the regulatory community can continue to pressure test some of their thinking around things such as endpoints, design of rare disease clinical trials. We will really, hopefully, be a place where people can challenge our understanding of clinical outcome assessments. It'll be a place of collaboration and dialogue exchange. So this just gives you a landscape of contributors so far. Now you will see that some of the areas where we've accumulated data, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, are not necessarily thought of as rare diseases, but there are, because these are heterogeneous diseases themselves, there are subpopulations in both of those broad disease categories that represent rare disease communities in every aspect. So this is also a place where we can capture a lot of mechanistic information, and we're sharing across, say, diseases where there's a very well characterized an understanding of mechanism of action, for instance, on certain drug targets, that this information could also be shared in a meaningful way to guide rare disease drug development. Again, CPATH has made a lot of efforts in this regard. We've built tools. We've worked with FDA, EMA, and other global regulatory authorities to advance tools. So this is also a place where people will come into the RDC DAP platform with a high degree of expectation that these tools are built for context of use. They are fit for purpose. There is validations in place. There's understanding from the regulatory communities of the value of the tools that are built on top of the platform, so that when you come into the system, you have an expectation that these are not just anything that anyone can attach to the tool, that they're well vetted. We understand the operating characteristics, and the tools will perform with a high degree of expectation in terms of their value. Now, obviously, a big component of pulling this off effectively is to create a culture of sharing. So you can ask, what's the motivation to share? And this is not necessarily broadly understood, and it is also a work in progress, because each of the different stakeholder communities understand this to a different capacity. So we're hoping that in the context of something like the Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come, and that's certainly the expectation here. But the value to each of these communities is to improve the quality of the research, to have a more broad understanding of the disease time course, the heterogeneity and variance of the disease, to develop better biomarkers, have a broader understanding of more meaningful clinical endpoints, and to obviously get this information into the scientific domain. So this is not a place where there is restrictions around the publication. This is a place where we're hoping for open dialogue and collaboration. It should bring this community together to discuss solutions in an open and collaborative way. And then ultimately serve the needs of patients. So this is something where patients will get a view into this system as it evolves. They will be a key stakeholder in this. Most likely the patient voice will be articulated into some of the tools as they evolve as well. So it's a lesson in really fully connecting the patient voice to a platform that is really meant to help them. This slide just gives you a snapshot of the data that's already been accumulated from the CPATH data stores. So there you can see there's quite a lot of data in it so far, but again, we can look at this and think it's a lot, but it's just not enough. So it's an expectation that this will continue to evolve and get better and get more fully populated as we grow the ecosystem. So again, I'd say one of the starting points is developing the legal agreements to get people to come together in an open and collaborative way to share data as openly as they can, but we will protect the data to the extent. So it is not something where data contributors have to feel that they will invalidate their intellectual property. If there's concerns about the sensitivity data, we can absolutely adhere to that and deal with timing sensitivities and considerations. One of the benefits of this sophisticated platform is that we can build in the heuristics around sharing. So it's not something that is done without thought. There is a data custodian and stewardship that's in place so that protection and privacy can be ensured. So there should be no concerns about sharing data in this platform. We have a lot of the built-in expectations about being GDPR compliant, as well as compliant with other regulatory and data privacy agreements as they evolve. So it's a place where we can add flexible tools in place to ensure the patient privacy and as well as the accessibility of the data. There's a long-standing process involved behind the scenes here around this notion of curation, transfer, exploration, and mapping. We have a staff, our data collaboration center is fully dedicated to ensuring that this happens in a seamless manner. So this is not just an automated system where we put data in and we just wash our hands and walk away. We have a fully vetted, very strong staff that manages this. People are ensuring that governance and standards are applied to the detail that they need to be, as well as the full vetting of any tool that we would potentially consider connecting to the platform as a whole. So in terms of the future here, we're expecting that this will be something that grows over time, and that as we continue to populate the platform with data and build tools, that this will be a global resource. And some of the tools such as the disease progression modelings, as well as understanding where the patient population resides and the details around clinical endpoints, will be something that the community can share and that will be pressure tested with the platform itself. Obviously, an expectation that the platform will be viable and open to all global research community is something that we will adhere to. I would say that this is already in place in many of the rare disease areas. So just as an example, both in the PKD and kidney transplant area, there is a number of models that have been built already. We are right now connecting them to the RDC Adapt platform. This is a work in progress. But as you'll be seeing at our launch meeting in September, we're open for business now, and it should be a place that we're expecting feedback from the entire community. This is only going to get better with the dialogue and interaction in an open way. So we're hoping that everyone listening to this will come to the table and check out the platform, be part of the community that pressure test this, and make this platform be as good as it can be. Again, there's a lot of diverse data types that will be accumulated into the platform over time. We need to be diligent that the platform evolves in a meaningful way, and that we recognize where the data gaps are, and that we collectively look to identify data that fills these gaps, but also ultimately to improve the development of rare disease cures to heighten the expectation that the rare disease community can expect this platform to be a resource for them. With that, I'd like to thank the organizers again for inviting me, and I'm happy to field questions, and anyone listening is welcome to email me as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Cella. I'm going to be talking about nonprofit tools and resources that have been sponsored by the National Institutes of Health for use in research and clinical care. In the mid-2000s, the NIH in various ways charged researchers like myself to transform clinical research with the use of cross-cutting patient-reported outcomes as well as performance measures of health in various areas of function, such as social function, cognitive function, and physical function, as well as covering symptoms like pain, depression, and many others. The basis of these charges were in the form of the PROMIS cooperative group, patient-reported outcomes measurement information system, NeuroQual, which was similar to PROMIS, but was done specifically for neurologic disorders, and the NIH Toolbox, which was sponsored by the Blueprint for cross-cutting clinical research and epidemiologic research activity. These three projects, PROMIS, NeuroQual, and the NIH Toolbox, all begun in the mid-2000s, have created an amazing amount of available assessments for use in nonprofit and other research. We've branded these three systems, as well as another one, which I'll come to in a moment, called Ask Me, under the brand name of Health Measures, and there is a website for access of all of these tools at www.healthmeasures.net. There are 4 measurement systems. I've mentioned 3 of them. They're all brief and psychometrically sound, and they produce measures for physical, mental, social health, symptoms, well-being, physical function, social function, and sensory and cognitive function. The age coverage is from 3 to 85, and actually very recently on the PROMIS side, we've extended that age down to age 1 for coverage of important health concepts. All of these systems allow for flexible administration in the form of computer adaptive tests, as well as short forms that are flexible and able to be compiled by the end user to meet their particular needs, and performance tests of functioning. They all work on a common metric across different measures and health conditions, which enables us to do comparative research across different health conditions, including the healthy general population. And they're appropriate for use in clinical practice, as well as research and educational settings. The 4 systems that are covered under the Health Measures umbrella are PROMIS, NeuroQual, Ask Me, and Toolbox. Now, PROMIS is comprised of self-report and parent report of symptoms and functional abilities. It includes global, physical, mental, and social health. It covers adults and children, and it does focus on general population norms or reference values, but also therefore allows for being able to measure people who are living with various chronic conditions and compare their status, their health status, to those in the general population. PROMIS cuts across all different chronic diseases, as well as the general population. NeuroQual, by contrast, is more focused on neurologic disorders. It's also self-report and also proxy report, includes physical, mental, and social health, covers adults and children, and covers those living with chronic neurologic conditions. Ask Me could think of as PROMIS for sickle cell disease, stands for Adult Sickle Cell Questionnaire Measurement System. It's a self-report system as well. It covers physical, mental, and social health. It's focused on adults and those living with sickle cell disease. Now, the NIH Toolbox, the Blueprint effort, is more focused on performance tests. It measures cognitive abilities, motor function, sensory function, and emotional health. It covers adults and children and is relevant to the general population as well as those living with a chronic condition. So you can see across these 4 measurement systems, quite a bit is covered for use as both self-report and performance measures of health and function. Here's one example of the physical functioning item bank that is a set of 160 different questions asking about different physical function capabilities, ranging from being able to transfer from a bed to a chair, for example, all the way to being an elite athlete. These systems have gotten very popular over the years. As I mentioned, their development started in the mid-2000s, and you can see there we'd have a handful of publications for each of these different measurement systems. But over time, and in particular in the last 7 or 8 years, there's been a dramatic increase in publications on PROMIS measures, also a significant increase in NIH Toolbox publications, and some increase in NeuroQual and Ask Me publications as well. If you look at that by measurement system, PROMIS being the overwhelming most dramatically published a set of measures, over 2,000 publications on PROMIS, but also over 300 on Toolbox and nearly 200 on NeuroQual. The website, healthmeasures.net, allows you to download PDFs, and this just gives you a sense that we're having downloads close to 200,000 per year of these different measurement systems. To give you a sense of what's the most popular, the PROMIS Global Health Measure is far and away the most popular thing downloaded. This is 10 questions that ask about physical and mental functioning. The PROMIS 29, which is 29 questions, gives you a 7-domain profile of pain, fatigue, depression, anxiety, sleep, physical function, and social function. That's the next most popular. And then we have a couple of physical function short forms that are very frequently downloaded, as well as NeuroQual coming in here at 5th place with its cognitive function measure. And then moving into anxiety, perceived stress, depression, pain, etc. This global mental 2A is a 2-item measure of mental health. When we look around the world, most of the activity with health measures tools is in the United States, with Canada and the United Kingdom and Australia coming in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. The reason for that is obviously because English language was how we developed these measures. But as you'll see, we're getting more and more activity going on around the world in different languages. I'll come to that in just a moment. There are technology products such as the Assessment Center application programming interface that allows you to administer PROMIS, NeuroQual, ASPE, and NIH Toolbox Emotion, as well as other tools directly through using the API in your electronic environment. The instruments are embedded and have engines to actually add other data collection systems as well. In addition, there's an iPad app for administering primarily the NIH Toolbox, but also some PROMIS tools are included in that app. And there's also a Spanish version of the Toolbox available in an app. And this is now being developed for self-individual assessment as I speak, but currently it depends upon an administrator using the app and conducting the testing with the subject. There's also a scoring service through Health Measures that allows you to score these tools, PROMIS, etc. And the scores are done using item response theory, providing very precise estimates of the different things that are measured. Saying a little bit more about the API, it allows you to integrate with other systems. So there's the CAD engine, as I mentioned, does the scoring in IRT, and you can integrate not just PROMIS, Toolbox, and NeuroQual, but more tools into this API suite of delivery and included in your electronic health record, for example. We've issued more and more translations licenses, as I mentioned, around the world. The growth of PROMIS is pretty impressive. So you'll see year over year, over the last 2 years, a doubling of translation licenses that have been given out. I hope that overview gives you a sense of how much has grown here in the PROMIS NeuroQual and Toolbox area in these past 15 years since the NIH initiated the development. Thank you.
We're so grateful that we were able to hear from Jeff Barrett and David Cella on those two amazing tools and resources that are outside of NINDS and NIH. Now, I'm going to take just a few minutes to highlight some things that some of our nonprofit community members might already be aware of, but some that people might not quite know about or how to access that are at NINDS and or NIH. So I have an overview slide up that is highlighting about 4 things that NINDS manages specifically, and then an additional 4 resources that are at the broader NIH level of management. So I'm going to take us through. I won't take the time to read this slide, but they will be highlighted at the top as we move forward. So of course, the first resource I want to highlight to this wonderful community of stakeholders is our nonprofit forum webpage. So this webpage can be found in the About section of the NINDS website. And this is where we really like to update the community on the current and upcoming and future forums that we hold every year. This is where you can always go to see when the next forum is going to occur, whether you can contribute feedback on a past forum or give us ideas for a future forum, and even register for the forum like you did to come here today. Farther down this page, we do maintain a list of past meetings in case you ever missed one and are looking for more information, but we also have this resources and tools box that we do update periodically, and this includes resources that are both at NINDS and across NIH. So some of these resources I'm actually going to highlight because they are just so valuable to the nonprofit community. The one I want to highlight from the NINDS side is our patient organizations page. So this page has a list of all of the different nonprofit organizations who are invested in similar research areas and disease focus areas as the NINDS portfolio covers. If you are looking for partner organizations or are looking to have your organization added to this site, you can go to this page and contact us or learn more about any of the topics that you might be interested in. We also added just this January a Find Your Program Director page. So hopefully those of you who were able to join us yesterday had the opportunity to either participate in a one-on-one chat with a program director or analyst so that you could ask very specific questions, or you were able to participate in those great 45-minute breakout rooms where we had really fantastic discussions from all sorts of people participating in this meeting. But if you missed that opportunity or you're still looking to contact people, you can go to this website. That's very simply Find Your Program Director. You can watch an introductory video by me, but more importantly, if you scroll down the page, you can start to learn exactly what all the different roles are. We're going to hear from our own program directors, the directors of our extramural divisions and clusters, and the analysts who really help make everything run. There's sections that really explain what are the roles, when do people talk to program directors, how is it that program directors help you, and we even have different search and flow charts and access to the NIH Matchmaker tool that is on NIH Reporter if you're really looking to get down into the weeds and understand this process a bit better. So from there, I'm going to take us over to a NINDS clinical trials specific page that we manage. And we do pull this information from clinicaltrials.gov that I'm going to touch on in a second. But if you're really looking for a curated list of trials that are managed by our institute that are specific to neurological disorders and stroke, you can come to this website and really, I hope, have an easier way of accessing different pieces of content that are very relevant to you and your community. But on top of all of that, I really want to highlight a few different opportunities that you can just learn more and educate your friends, your families, and those who are important to you on the host of things that we cover at NINDS. So the first pages that I want to highlight are our disorders pages. These include incredible fact sheets that we work on with our extramural staff, our policy staff, and in our communications office. And they cover the whole spectrum of disorders that are in the NINDS portfolio. If you're looking for more information that is accessible to patients, to families, to members of your community and the general public, this really should be your first stop. We do update these pages regularly, and if you're looking for more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. We also have a revamped Brain for Life public education site. This site actually connects to Facebook. So if you are also looking to have something that is in a different platform, you can navigate over to Facebook. It is just NINDS Brain for Life. We do post most of our updates here. They are always very accessible to all sorts of stakeholders, and it really highlights where we're going in different clinical, translational, and basic research directions. Additionally, we have really taken in this idea of making sure all of the content we create is captured and available to those who may not have been able to attend a meeting in the first place. One place that you can find this is on our YouTube channel. We do have a host of playlists on this channel, including a science education and outreach section that is really about kind of teaching younger audiences, maybe parents of those children, about neuroscience, neurological disorders. You can also find a playlist about past nonprofit forums and all sorts of different webinars and instructional and tutorial kind of videos here. Please do save this on your browser. We really like to have this, and we encourage you to direct other people to this resource if it would be useful to you. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to go bigger into broader NIH managed websites. So the first of these websites that really tends to be quite relevant for the forum is the clinicaltrials.gov site. So very simply, this is managed by the National Library of Medicine, www.clinicaltrials.gov. You can search the whole database of different clinical trials that are ongoing. This is also a site that is an entry point for researchers, but of course I'm going to highlight the areas of interest for patients and caregivers. So there is a section that is specifically dedicated to patients and families. It has been written and includes curated information that is relevant for you if you are in the area, so you're not having to weed through kind of funding opportunities and processes to end up applying because you instead want to actually participate in the trial. I want to highlight in here, there is a separate section to really learn about the studies. So if you navigate to that page, it really explains and breaks down what are clinical studies, what is a clinical trial versus an observational study. It really helps patients who are new to this process, their caregivers, those managing kind of the different disease organizations, advocacy organizations, all members of the public. It really breaks down the whole clinical trials process, and I highly encourage everyone to visit this page first if you're new to the whole situation. Then I'm going to shift over to one of our very helpful institutes at NIH and really popular resources that they have had that we hear about year after year from the nonprofit community. Oh my goodness, this has really helped me out. So the first of that is the Ncats Toolkit, and it is a toolkit for patient-focused therapy development. So if you navigate over to our sister institute's website, you can find all sorts of resources that are truly about how do we translate our basic and translational science into clinical science that is really going to bring new therapies online for our patients and do it in a very patient-centered way, which I know has been a very big part of this 2021 nonprofit forum, particularly with our patient engagement session from the other day. I'm also going to highlight another page that Ncats manages. It's the Rare Disease Registry. So the acronym for this is RADAR. And we do have both of these Ncats sites included in that resources box on the NINDS nonprofit forum page that I showed you before. And the Rare Disease Registry program really is a way for patients and caregivers and family members who have been unfortunately touched by different rare diseases to kind of see who else is out there, really get yourself included in the process, find a way to find the rest of your community. And we really do use this to help inform our research and to really help out with those clinical trials, particularly when we know there aren't quite so many people as we might need to really make sure that we have some solid science getting us through to that next therapy breakthrough. Finally, I'm going to just touch very briefly on websites that our Office of Extramural Research at NIH manage. These are websites that cover all of the different decisions we make and processes that we use for grants, funding, and spending. So if you go to grants.nih.gov, there are once again pages that have been specifically curated and written for the media and the public. OER, Office of Extramural Research, really does quite a bit of work here to try to explain the whole process, explain how we make decisions about what grants we put out for the research community to apply to, how it works in terms of the entire funding life cycle. And I do want to highlight that at NINDS, we're about to make a few tutorial videos to really cover this focused on the NINDS portfolio. We'll be using information from those breakout discussions that we had yesterday on the first day of this 2021 forum meeting. And we're always looking for additional feedback on what might be useful. What are your burning, outstanding questions when it comes to how NIH handles all of this? A very useful page we find for patients, families, caregivers, and the different nonprofit organizations is the page that covers our categorical spending. So it's research condition and disease categories is the acronym RCDC. And this really highlights the exact amount that we spend on different disease areas. You can look by different institutes. You can look by projects that are scientific and clinical. In fact, you can kind of look by year. We do have kind of the finalized numbers that are based on what was appropriated for a given fiscal year. If ever they are not finalized yet, they're always identified as estimated numbers. And this can really help out as you're talking to your communities, as you're talking to each other, as you're trying to consider what's happening in the research space at NINDS or NIH for your given disease area. So with that, I really hope that these resources at NINDS and NIH continue to help you navigate this space. And I'm going to close out our pre-recorded session so that we can jump right into a live Q&A, again, with our illustrious speakers, Jeff Barrett and David Cella. And I'm, of course, happy to answer additional questions on behalf of NINDS and NIH. Thank you.
So our dear colleague, Monica Weldon, also a member of the forum's executive committee, and I would now like to thank all three speakers, Dr. Barrett, Dr. Cella, and Sam, for the very helpful and stimulating presentations. And we will try to prime the pump of questions by encouraging everyone to enter any question you might have for any one of the three speakers into the chat box. And we'd also like to prime the pump by asking the first question. So I'll take the privilege of one of the moderators and ask Dr. Barrett the first question. Thank you, Dr. Barrett, for an excellent presentation, first of all. My question is, for the many advocacy organizations participating in this meeting, could you please summarize or give some additional flavor to what might be the potential benefits to these participants' own patient communities of their participating in the RDCA DAP program? Secondly, what they need to have in place in order to participate. And finally, whom they should contact to discuss such participation.
Thanks for the question, Ron. So again, as I tried to mention in the slides, we are going to be officially launching the platform September 14th. So I did provide a link inside the chat where people can find static information about RDCA DAP and some general background. But more specifically to your question, I think many of these patient communities may already have access to certain platform, be it I Am Rare, be it other places. We are now in a position to actually build connectors to each of those platforms. So the one thing I would tell you overall is that if you're already sharing, that doesn't mean that you can't share with us. In fact, as we're working out the details for how we share with the broader ecosystem, these are things that we're trying to build into the platform itself so that there's a seamless transfer, and also so that the community who does share it, we don't have to go back and ask for permission a second and third time. So I think the good thing is that all the stakeholders in this space understand the value of sharing, the necessity to represent the patient voice, and to make sure that the most value for their data is able to be generated. What distinguishes the RDC DAP platform is the connectivity of the different data types, the fact that these data are all curated and integrated so that you can achieve maximal value for both drug developers as well as academic researchers. So I think that's one of the distinguishing features, is that you're trying to build something for the entire ecosystem to facilitate cures. And I think that's so. I would say overall, we're really hoping that if you already shared, that you speak up and look to make sure that your data is being shared with RDC DAP. If you want more information, please contact us directly. We will give you exact details on how to share data to the platform and make sure that your data is visible to the community.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. We have our first question from NINDS Director Walter Koroshetz to follow up that very helpful comment. His question is, how does Critical Path make decisions on which diseases will be entered into the platform to bring their data in?
So I don't think we have any rules for anybody being set away from the RDC DAP platform. So that means, in general, we're open for business for all 8,000 rare diseases. And I would say we've made a great start in this. And as I tried to allude to in the slides, we're just starting out. So I would say no one will be turned away. Please approach us. We'll create a hub for this. And I think, at the beginning, we're going to basically try to accumulate the data, organize it, curate it, make it available for all rare diseases. I think that's really one of the benefits to this too, is that you may find that there's some similarity with one rare disease versus another. So having the data in there is of great value for this community as a whole. We will turn no one away. So anyway, we're open for business.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
And I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I had a quick question because I had remembered one of the tools that we're about to begin working with, which is the GUID, which is the unique identifier number, because, as we all know, there are multiple databases for several diseases. And I do believe, I didn't even really know about this until a few weeks ago. So now we're learning how to utilize it. Some databases don't use it, and some databases do. So are you going to be utilizing the GUID or the unique identifier number? And if, say, for instance, like our database, we don't use it yet, but we're trying to eliminate the possibility of bringing in similar data sets, right? Or this, are double dipping into the same group of records and things like that. So I was just wondering what your take is on that. And I would think that would be an easy tool to use to bring in and eliminate duplicate data sets.
I think it's a great question, and it's clearly a huge objective of this platform to handle duplicate data and to make sure that it is not counted a second time. So, and the other thing to keep in mind too is that because FDA is a sponsor for this, this is something that they are obviously paying close attention to and giving us guidance. The other thing that makes it a little bit more complex is that there's actually many choices in the GUID space. So there is not one universally accepted GUID. So this remains a work in progress, but we have a strategy in place to do this now, and we have flexibility to evolve this over time. So we are ingesting all data as it comes with the intention of tagging all the data so that we can apply a GUID to all the data as it's integrated. So it's absolutely part of the strategy.
Awesome, awesome.
And now to get Dr. Cella deeply involved here, we do have one question directed to you, Dr. Cella. That is, the comment is, we have done quite a bit of work to modify and validate the NIH Toolbox Cognitive Battery for Intellectual Disability through a 5-year NIH grant, and have created a manual for administration to individuals with ID. This is arguably one of the few, if any, cognitive measures now specifically adapted to and validated in an ID population. Given NIH has supported a huge amount of validation for this measure and its use across many disease populations, which was its original goal, is there a plan for work with FDA to help get this measure recognized by FDA as an adequate endpoint for clinical trials?
Oh, thank you for the question, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me now that I'm live. That's really a great question. The short answer is yes. There are some things going on with FDA and with regard to testing cognitive function with the NIH toolbox. And you mentioned a couple examples of the validation that's currently available. There also is activity to make it mobile, so it can be done off of a smartphone through an app, as well as being able to administer it remotely, and even a self-administration version. So the technology enabling toolbox assessments that are now pretty well normed is moving along thanks to several NIH-sponsored projects across various institutes. The FDA has expressed interest, particularly in early cognitive impairment, mild cognitive impairment, so early dementia, being able to identify targets of treatments that can either slow the decline of cognitive function or perhaps even improve it during the early stages. So there are discussions going on with FDA around use of the toolbox through the Drug Development Tool Program that's part of the 21st Century Cures Act legislation.
Thank you very much. Ms. Monica, you
Yeah. And I had a quick question talking about tools, because as you know, many of us, I guess, that are nonprofit leaders, and some of us here, I guess, are new in the space. Can you kind of define for us what it means to have a validated tool? What does that mean, and why is it so important to have these validated measuring tools? And the second part of my question is, many of the people in the nonprofit space that are now investigating starting their registries, of course, hindsight's always 20/20 for me, but I didn't know what a validated tool was. And so looking at these tools, I would figure that having these tools that measure outcomes would be important to view before you ever start putting surveys into your database to start collecting data. And would you agree with that, or what would your strategy around that be? What would you recommend?
So the best definition for validity is that something measures what you think it measures. That's the common definition. So if you think you have a measure of depression, it's important to prove that you have a measure of depression. If you think you have a measure of memory, it's important to prove that you have that measure. And that proof is done usually by correlating results on your new measure to results on some familiar other measure or some other criterion, for a diagnosis of depression or cognitive impairment. So the measure is actually detecting what you think it is. And then if you expand on that, you continue to accrue validity information if you show that it's responsive to change in what. So it's not just measuring what you think it's measuring, but it responds to change in what you think it's measuring. Because if it doesn't respond to change in depression or memory or whatever it is you're measuring, then of course it's not valid in that regard, because you're not picking up something that's important to pick up. So, and then when you get into international trials with different languages, there's another aspect of validity, which is the cross-cultural validity. There may be a questionnaire or a performance test that's valid in the US or North America, but not in Asia or Africa. And if the trial is done around the world, you want to be sure that you're either asking questions or giving tasks that have relevance in those different cultures. So it's an ongoing process of accruing validity. As for what to use and how to go about making choices in a registry, which I think is your second question, Monica.
Mhm.
Yes, I do think it's important to first know what it is you want to get out of that registry, and then select your options accordingly. The nice thing about the tools that I described is that you have a menu of options to choose from that are going to be more relevant to your particular disease or registry focus, so that you can select the questions within an item bank of depression or fatigue or pain that are more relevant to your condition. And in fact, lots of people do studies to look at, say, sickle cell specific pain, and make sure that you pick pain questions from a larger PROMIS item bank for sickle cell disease. That's what happened in the Ask Me project that led to the development of the Ask Me tool that is also part of Health Measures.
Nice. Well,
And
thank
Sam, I'm sorry. Sam, could you confirm that we've got like 4 minutes left? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
So I'd like to give Dr. Barrett another opportunity. Dr. Barrett, I've been really impressed with our particular foundation's work with your team, and in the ways in which you not only help us analyze the data that we might already have in our natural history database and so forth, but that you also do two other things. You expand on those data. You listed the various ways, for example, inputting clinical trial data, especially the placebo arm of those data sets. I think you've got about 6 companies worth of data on our disease, Friedreich's ataxia now. And you're also going into such things as imaging, things that would not be normally entered in our own disease groups, natural history studies. So you're expanding on those data, then you're helping us analyze those data to arrive at vastly improved natural history or clinical outcome measures that would lead to Monica's question about how can we validate those outcome measures. And so just wanted to give you an opportunity to expand on that a bit.
Ron, it's a great point. And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is that just by assembling this data in an integrated way by your contributions and others, other people have come into the fold. So this is not something, CPATH is a small outfit. So attracting clinical investigators to recognize that there's data available to ask some of these questions has happened kind of seamlessly. And I think that's a key part of this, is the transparency that has to happen with all of the stakeholders in each of these rare disease spaces. So I'm encouraged by the early progress, and then hopeful that as we start to build tools that are useful for patient selection, for looking at disease progression, that these become part of the standard complement of tools that is attached to all data in all rare diseases. So, but I got to give you guys a shout out for being first in the water and helping us illustrate the value. So thank you.
Our pleasure. Exactly. Miss Monica, do you have another question?
I actually, he's answered all my questions. I didn't know if anybody else from the group.
While you're looking at that, I'll ask one more of Dr. Cella, if you don't mind.
Sure.
That recognizing your another set of your expertise, Dr. Cella, in cancer research, you explored the avenue that's very important to all of us in neurology, and that is fatigue. I like to say about fatigue scales that we all need them and none of us have them. And I just wonder if you might have some insights into how we might develop fatigue scales for our neurological conditions, and how in doing so we might differentiate between the fatigue that comes from the biological impact of our disease and the psychological and emotional impact of our disease, sometimes leading to fatigue resulting from depression. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack in that question, and I think I have about a half a minute. But first, I would say that the PROMIS fatigue item bank is 95 questions long. So I would argue that you don't need a new measure, but what you need to do is you take your specific condition and identify through a process what are the most important or relevant questions from that 95. And whichever questions you pick, you'll get a score on the same PROMIS metric, which is really one of the fantastic properties of PROMIS and NeuroQual and Toolbox. And this was actually done in MS. where it was shown that by selecting through experts and patients 8 questions that are more specifically related to MS fatigue compared to a standard off-the-shelf 8-item short form, also from the same bank, you got exactly the same central estimate, that is mean score, whether you use the custom one or the off-the-shelf one. But the custom one was much more informative, provided a lot more information about the MS population. There's a paper on that which I can share with you after the session.
That would be great. Thank you so much. So, Ms. Monica, should we turn it back over to Sam?
Sure. And I guess if anybody has any questions for later, just pop them in there and we will get them over and let them answer them for you on a side note.
Absolutely. Thank you, Monica and Ron, and thanks so much, Jeff and David. This was a really great panel. And I do want to say on behalf of NINDS and NIH, if anyone ever has any questions about trying to find information that we have about who you're trying to connect with someone, you're trying to understand who you should connect to, please do always ask. We are here. We are really ready to engage with you and are excited to share the resources that we have and to make sure that they make sense to you and your needs. So with that, again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. As Monica just said, Jeff has actually just provided his email helpfully if you want to send him direct questions. But with that, we're going to take about a 4-minute break now, just so we can reset before our final session of the forum, which is going to be on success stories and the importance of early diagnosis. So we will see you back at now 3 minutes from now, 1:45.